Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Chaitanyam Sarvagam Sarvam Sarvabhuta Guhashayam Yat Sarva Vishayatitam Tasmai Sarva Vide Namaha. Buddhyado satyupadhau cha tatha satya visheshata yasya chedatmano jnata tasya karyam katham bhavet. Prasanne vimale vyomni Prajnanaikarase dvaye Utpannatmadhiyo bhrūta Kimanyat karyamishyate Atmanam sarvabhūtastham Amitram chātmanopi yaha Pasyannichyantyasau nūnam Shīti kartum vibhavasum. Buddhyado upado sati. When one is aware of the upadhi such as buddhi, buddhi etc. are always there. But when there is an awareness of buddhi, the upadhi beginning with buddhi, tatha asati, when the awareness is not there, avisheshata, one in whom the perception of oneself does not change, avisheshata. So self-perception, who I am, remains the same. In presence of buddhi, meaning that buddhi and the upadhi, they do not habitually create an identification and create a notion, in spite of being there, that aham brahmasmi, akartaham, abhoktaham, that perception remains, whether buddhi and upadhi is there, meaning awareness is there or not there. Yasya chet atmano jnata, one for whom this is the perception of the self, he is true knower of the self. Tasya karyam katham bhavet, how can there be anything for him to be karyam, to be done? There cannot be any compulsion for him to do something. It's a duty. Prasanne vimale vyomni prajnanaikarasedve dve utpannatmadhyo brute. So he knows that buddhi I am not, upadhi I am not. Then who am I? Prasanne vimale vyomni. So that means prasannam, clear, vimalam. So the explanation was that which is free from the inherent impurity or the incidental impurities. Like vyoma, which is all pervasive, ever pure. Prajnana ekarasedve. Because I am prajnana ekarasaha, therefore prasannaha. Advaya, therefore vimalaha. That's how the explanation is given. Utpanna atmadhiya. What is the reason why the wise person is same with awareness of buddhi or in absence of awareness of buddhi? Because self-awareness does not change. Utpanna atmadhiya, which is prasannam, vimalam, prajnanaekarasam, advayam. So that is where atmadhi is there, that is what the atma self-perception is there. Kimanjat karyamishyate, other than self-knowledge, meaning seeing oneself as prajnana ekarasadvaya, seeing that, other than that what karya, what duty is there, what is to be accomplished? Atmanam sarabhutastam amitram chatmanovyaha. Sarabhutastam atmanam, someone who sees the self that is equally abiding in all the beings. Amitram chatmanopiha pashyan. Then also he sees someone as amitra and someone else. So amitra is in relation to mitra. Someone is seen as a friend, someone is seen as an enemy. Even while supposedly seeing the same self in all, he still continues to see someone as friend, someone else as enemy, that means he doesn't see. Asau nunam shiti kartam vibhavasam. He is making one Atma friend, other Atma enemy. The one that is samam sarveshu bhuteshu, one that is same in all. Prajnana ekarasaha advaya. In that prajnana ekarasaha advaya Atma. Prasanne vimale vyomni. How can there be a friend? How can there be an enemy? Friend also is one that is different from oneself. Enemy also is one who is different. So only someone different from me can be seen as a friend or an enemy. Even a friend also. That means on one hand you see the duality of yourself and other beings. And prajnanaika rase advahe utpannatmaji. How can there be the atmadhi, the self-knowledge, which is prajnanam ekarasam, which necessarily has to be myself? The wise person is wise because he sees the self, himself in everything. In self there cannot be friend or enemy. Now continuing with the verse 33. Atmana karma sheshatvam kim sopadikasyeshyate nirupadikasya vikalpya. Karma sheshatvam, the Atma is in some way connected to karma as a karta. So that Atma is a part of karma as karta or doer. So do you say that the self is a doer And therefore there is kartavya that he has to perform, he is obliged, there is obligatory duty. Karyam, kartavyam. So that is how Atma becomes connected to karma. That is by way of the notion of kartrutvam. That I am a doer. Moment I look upon myself as doer, then the doing is involved and done is involved, the karta is there, karma is there, karanam is there, kriya is there. Then also immediately comes the notion that I have to, this is my I'm obliged to do something. The sense of obligation is associated with a doer. Because the doer has an identity. A Brahmana, Kshatriya, Brahmachari, Gruha, some identity will be there. Moment there is an identity, there is also awareness of my place in the scheme of things. And what is expected out of me, what I am obliged to do. A sense of obligation which is what compels a person to do things. Is not just doing the action which takes place at level upadhi anyway. It is identifying with that and therefore looking upon myself as a karta, therefore as obliged, therefore kartavya. So this is all there for sopadikasya. Upadhi sahitasya meaning one entertaining identification upadhi, it's called sopadhika. Upadhina sahitam saha vartate, sahitam vartate, one that obtains with upadhi means identified with upadhi. There is no such entity as sopadhika atma. What is the atma? Is prasanne, vimale, vyomni, prajnani, karase, advait. That is the atma. Which has no connection with upadhi of any kind. So Atma is not sopadhika. But Atma is looked upon as sopadhika on account of the identification with upadhi. Ignorance that causes identification, that causes the notion that I am so and so, sopadhika. Moment there is identification upadhi, then I am so and so, that identity comes. And moment identity comes, then the idea of duty comes, obligation comes. So all of this is sopadhikasya ishyate. When you are insisting upon, this is the Mimamsaka is all the time being taught, addressed here. Who insists that yavam jivam yavad jiva agnihotram jihoti. One must perform agnihotra, the duty, as long as one is alive. Whether it is wise or otherwise. Vedantin says that this duty and all of these notions are the consequence of what is one's perception of oneself. You cannot lump everybody in the same category. There are exceptions. There are some who have a different perception of themselves. Those who are free from the idea of individuality. So there can be someone like that. That's a Vedanta. That yes, generally a person is habitually identified with upadhi. And therefore what is done at the level of upadhi is thought to be done at the level of the self, and therefore I am a karta, bhokta. That's the usual notion about oneself. But understand that kartrutva, bhoktrutva is not the nature of the self. And therefore, Atma is prajnanaikarasah advayah prasannah vimalah. It is possible that one may have the true perception of oneself because that's the nature of self. Even though majority of the people entertain notions about oneself, it's not a rule that everybody has to remain ignorant, that knowledge can be there. Which is what the scriptures impart. So therefore, one may know nirupadikoham. I am unconnected to body, mind, sense complex. So for one who has this perception of oneself, are you saying that he also has duties? So that is where Vedanta distinguishes a wise from the ignorant. Because adyam angikritya. There is no sopadik atma, one who thinks that I am upadi. So person, an ignorant person entertaining identification with upadi, body, mind, sense complex, thinking that I am a purusha, I am stri, I am a brahmana, kshatriya, having an identity, and therefore feeling a sense of obligation. This all is alright, but dvitiyam dushayati, the one who sees oneself is nirupadika, unconnected with the upadi in any way. Asangohayam purusha. For that person there cannot be any karma sheshatvam or any connection with karma. He cannot be a performer of karma, nor can he become one entity or an accessory in karma. He can't be karta, karma, karanam, anything. So that is said in the verse 33. Prajna prana anukaryatma chaye vakshadi gochara dhyayati veti chokto hi shuddho muktasvato hi saha. Prajna prana anukari atma. Prajna prana anukari atma. Atma, that is prajna prana anukari. Anukari means one who does what they do. Anukaranam, following, imitating, copying. So prajna and prana comes from the Kaushitaki Upanishad. Prajna is buddhi, is referring to Kaushitaki Upanishad. Where prajna and prana, both of these, Atma is, the nature of Atma is unfolded with reference to the upadhi of prajna and prana. Prajna stands for the Jnana Shakti and prana stands for the Kriya Shakti. So prajna buddhi. And prana, of course, is the prana, means the Kriya Shakti, the source of Kriya. So prajna prana kari atma becomes karyatma. It's not karyatma. Prajna prana kari and atma becomes prajna prana karyatma. So who is prajna prana kari? Prajna pranau anukartum shilam asyati. The in pratyaya is there, karin, shitachalyam. So the one whose nature it is to follow, to imitate prajna and prana. Meaning what? Prajna pranopadikaha. Atma will only imitate prajna and prana upadhi when it is identified with that. Then he thinks that I am doing, when prajna does something, prana does something. So So prajna prananukari means what? Prajna pranopadikaha. One who is identified, the upadi, namely prajna and prana, the intellect and prana. Then what happens? That sopadika atma is called sopadika atma, identified upadi. Chhaya akshadigo chhaya eva akshadigo charaha. Chhaya means here a shadow or a reflection. So chhaya eva, what is chhaya? Suryadi pratibimbam eva. Like the pratibimba, reflection of entities such as sun in water. Jaleshu, just as the sun gets reflected in water, akshadi gocharaha, then sun becomes the object of experience. Otherwise you may not know, but then when he gets reflected, then you see. Then gocharaha, he comes within the limits of, or within the boundaries of the akshas, sense organs, then you can see or experience him. Similar, indriya tadvaraka vrittishu pratibimbitatma. In case of the sun, the pratibimba, the reflection takes place in a reflecting medium such as water. In case of atma, the consciousness, the reflection, as though reflection takes place in the mind, meaning in the vritti. And the vritti takes place corresponding to an object out there, Vishaya. And Vishakara vritti takes place when the mind reaches out to the object through the gateway of the sense organ. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. In that vritti, it is nature of vritti of the mind to reflect consciousness, so automatically the reflection will take place, just as it is nature of water to reflect in lighter objects such as sun. That avivekad, the aviveka, inability to distinguish, the reflection is different and the reflecting medium is different. In fact, the water reflecting medium may be moving, restless, shaking, and the reflection appears to be shaking. So, to take the reflection to be shaking is aviveka. Not recognizing that the shaking, the movement takes place in the water, even when the reflection appears to be restless, it is not. So also the Atma gets reflected, this is modern understand in the mind or the vritti. It looks like the reflected self, it's called Chidavasa, is as limited, as impure, as disturbed, as distracted as a vritti. And that is how concluding about oneself based on the way the self gets reflected in mind, that is in a vritti. Tat avivek vavikeve avivekat karoti ivaiti. So the karanam, the action takes place in the buddhi. And the ignorant person concludes that I am doing, Atma is doing. So that iti dhyayativa leelayativa iti shrutyoktaha. That is similar to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad saying dhyayativa, he as though meditates, concentrates. Dhyanam. Leelayativa, he as though gets distracted. So concentration, distraction are the states of mind. And the one identified with the mind concludes that I am meditating, I am getting distracted. Tasyam dashayam karma sheshatvam ashnuvanopi. Tasyam dashayam. This is called sopadikatvam. Meaning, identification of the upadhi takes place like this. Because only when you see the two together, that is when the notion can be there. The prajna and prana and atma cannot be together unless the atma is reflected in the buddhi. That vritti may be created from a vishaya, may be created from prana or action also. So kartrutva, bhoktrutva, all these vrittis, and you see them together. The self and the vritti is seen together because self supposedly gets reflected in vritti. Therefore, the I and the vritti are together and not distinguishing the two. I take kartaham, bhoktaham, dhyayamiham, as I am meditating. So this is the one who entertains this is called sopadhigatvam. This is how Vedanta explains the identification of self with the upadhi. By the self getting reflected on the upadhi, this is called chidabhasa. Taking chidabhasa to oneself. Not recognizing that this is a reflection and I am the image, not recognizing that like the sun taking the reflection to be the self and concluding that I am restless, I am dull, I am many, I am limited. Tasyam dashayam. This is called sopadhigatvam. In this dasha, in this state of Brahma or delusion, that is the result of ignorance or aviveka. Karma sheshatvam ashnuvanopi. Then Vedanta also accepts karma sheshatvam. In that case, I am obliged to perform karma because I look upon myself as karta. Karma, I see myself as a limited entity, therefore automatically my mind will compel me to do things to become free from sense of limitation. Tathapi, swata shuddha nirupadikasya. Reality, swata shuddha. Prasanne vimale vyomni prajnane karase dve. Utpannatmadhiya. One whose atmadhi, the self-perception, is now in prasannam vimalam. Swata shuddho muktasya atma bhavati. In reality, the self is swata shuddha, ever pure. Swata shuddha means one is pure by one's own self, not because of something else. Swata mukta, by nature, shuddha, buddha, mukta. So that is the nature of the Atma. And for one who has this knowledge, Atma never has kartrutva. Kartrutva or the karma, kartavya comes for a person who looks upon the self as a karta bhokta. Atma doesn't have any kartavya. The Jivatma has a kartavya who looks upon the self in identification with the upadhi. So that example is explained by Tikakara. Udakanugatattvena suryasya kampadimattaya bhasamanatvepi. Udaka anugatattvena, on account of imitating the water, being reflected in the water. Suryasya kampadimattaya bhasamanepi. So Surya appears to be shaking, restless. Even though it appears like that, na paramatada surya kampadiman, but this is called viveka. Even when Surya appears to be shaking or restless or moving, then also Surya is sthiraha. So this is something to be seen. The viveka is that all that movement is in the reflecting medium water. Therefore that movement is assigned to water. And the reflection is seen as motionless. Even when it appears to be that movement belongs to something else, and that the reflection in the sun is motionless. तथा च उपाधि विगमे भेद विपर्यासादि विगमात्. So when the identification of upadhi goes away, then sense of limitedness also goes away, then bheda, the division, also goes away, and then dvarahinam karma, then karma has no dvara. Karma cannot catch me. This bheda, viparyasa, viparita buddhi, seeing myself different from others, seeing myself as confined as upadhi, that becomes dvara. That becomes a cause for me to look upon myself as an obliged being, as one who is obliged to perform action. So it is this self-notion arising from the identification of upadhi becomes a dvara by which karma sticks to me, attaches itself to me. By viveka, when that false perception is gone, then there is no dvara, no meaning, no reason, no cause for the karma to be connected to me. Dvarahinam karma atmatvadam na dhokate. That karma doesn't get attached to the Atmavid, because attachment, identification, lending upon one is only due to the gateway of the identification. It is not that, therefore, for a wise person, there is no kartavya. Nirupadikasya atmanah na karma sheshatvam iti uktam upapadayan. Nirupadikasya atmanah. So Atma is called Nirupadika only with reference to Sopadika. Because of Upadhi being there, therefore Atma is described as Nirupadika, as devoid of identifying the Upadhi. Otherwise, Nirupadika is only in reference to a relation to Sopadika. But since there is habitually the identification of upadhi, therefore the word nirupadika is used to bring to our attention the true nature of the self. Na karma sheshatvam. Nirupadika atma cannot become part of karma because that gateway of self-notion is not there. Now upapadayan, that is being explained next verse with reasoning. प्राणायामान षडाचर्य इत्यादि यति धर्म विषय विधिशेषता नास्ति इति. It's interesting, from Manusmriti, all kinds of things are there. Anna, Ratya, Chayan, Jantun, Hinastya Jnanato Yati. So Manusmriti says that Jnanata, unknowingly, Anna during day and Ratrau during night. Jantun hinasti. Some little insects, etc., are being killed by us knowingly or unknowingly during the day and at night also. Vishuddhyartham. So this yati, who is a parivrajaka, who is always on the move from one place to the other, is likely because the earth, the ground earth will have some insects moving about there. It's likely that you may step over them, likely that you may kill them, or you may be instrumental in killing them. And so when this movement is there, vicharanam is there, it is likely that some insects are being killed. Knowingly, therefore, a prayaschitta vishuddhyartham, for purifying the mind from that sin, pranayaman characharet, 6 pranayama shuddhan badayati, because it's parivrajaka. Ityadi yati dharma visheshata. So when you're a yati or you're a wandering monk, then this duty comes on you. Api asya nasti. For the wise person, even this is also not there. So, point is that, alright, he doesn't have any obligatory duties. Because there is no obligation, he is free from identification upadhi. But still he lives his life and therefore wanders from one place to another. In that process, this happens. So, Vishuddhyartham, for self-purification, should he not be performing his pranayama? That is also a duty. So how do you say that the wise person has no duty at all? So next verse, even that is also not there. Apranasya. Apranasya manaskasya. Tatha samsargino drushe. Vyomavad vyapino hyasya. Katham karyam bhaven mama. Mama, so for me, karyam katham bhaven. How can there be something karya? How can there be an obligated duty? Here all along what is being dismissed is obligatory duty. The sense of obligation is here dismissed with reference to wise person. That's all the idea is. It's not so much the movement or activities taking place. It's karmanya karmanya pashet. But one who looks upon oneself as an individual, then he has this duty, sense of obligation. Katham karyam bhavam. For me who knows myself in this manner, how can there be karya, kartavya, something to be done? There cannot be obligation to do or there cannot be compulsion to do. How can there be compulsion in me? That's wonders. So what's the nature of self? Apranasya amanaskasya. Aprano hyamana shubhraha. So often this statement has been now repeated here in this text. Prana, I am devoid of prana. Amanaha, devoid of the mind. Apranasya, amanaskasya. Tatha asamsargina asanguhyam purushaha. Ananvāgatastena bhavati. He goes through various experiences in the waking state, dream state, deep sleep state. Ananvāgatastena bhavati, becomes unconnected to them. And therefore freely moves, like a big shark moving from one bank of the river to the other. So also a wise person goes from waking to sleep and sleep to waking without being connected. Asamsargina, no samsarga, no contact, no association, no relationship, no identification. So kriya shakti pranahinasya, jnana shakti manohinasya, apranasya amanaskasya, meaning that there is no kriya shakti in Atma and there is no even ichha shakti or in Atma or jnana, no shakti in Atma, it all belongs to upadhi. If Atma is possessed of the power of action, possesses power of knowledge, then the moment you possess something, some kind of obligations will come. Kriya Shakti, Pranahinasya, Jnana Shakti, Manohinasya, Svabhavata Asamsargena Asangasya. How come he is Kriya Shakti Hina, Prana Shakti Hina? Because of Samsarga, Asangaha. Kriya Shakti is there in Upadhi. Jnana Shakti is there in the Upadhi. But in spite of being in the midst of the Upadhi, he is unconnected. Vyomvat aparichinnasya vyom vyapinah, who is not confined to an Upadhi, he is all pervasive, all inclusive. He is formless, shapeless, therefore he is partless. Swatah chalan shakti rahitasya yavat. Like Vyoma or space, which is all pervasive, which occupies everything, has no place to move, therefore it is motionless. Swatah chalan rahitasya vyomna, like Vyoma by itself is motionless. Although when a part moves in the space, it may create the notion that the part space also is moving. All the space identified with the part may think that I am moving. It is possible. That is the result of the identification. But swatah chalan rahitasya, the space by itself, by nature, is motionless. And when the space knows that, then it doesn't matter what happens at the level of the part, etc. Drushehe, who am I? Mama is 6 case of Drushehe. I who am Drushi, Swarupa, I am who is consciousness. Chidekarasasya, there is nothing but pure consciousness. Evam vidasya mama katham karyam bhaved. I who is just plain simple consciousness, ever asanga, unconnected to Kriya Shakti, Prana Shakti, Upadhi. For me, how can there be karyam? How can there be something to be done? An obligatory duty? How can there be a compulsion to do something for me? Katham karyam bhaved is not a question. Na katham bhaved is an akshepa. Na katham apetyartha. There cannot be karyam. Understand what karya. Karya means something to be done. There yat pratyaya is there. Something to be done. Not karya means just doing, but something to be done. Karyam, kartavyam. So this nirupadikasya atmana na karma sheshatvam. So this is the upapatti. The reasoning given in this verse as to how nirupadika atma cannot have any connection with karma. Cannot be part of karma, even as a karta or as a karma or anything, for which the reasons are given here. You see, this here is to connect with the statements made in different places in the scriptures. Something is said in this context, some other context, so different things are said in different places. And if those statements are not understood in the right context, then we may think that it applies to the wise person also. That's what Mimamsaka would say. A Mimamsaka would not distinguish what we call a wise person and another wise person. For him, everybody is the same. And therefore the rules that are given in Shruti and Smruti, they say they apply without any exception to everybody. And the Vedantin wants to show an exception, that's all. Not that we disregard what the scriptures say in different places about what is to be done. But all that the Vedantin is saying is there is an exception to those things. All those statements apply to ignorant people. There is an exception. And therefore, you cannot apply the same rule to everybody. That's the idea here. Lord Krishna says, Tatrikagram manah krutva yata chittendriya kriya upavishyasane yunyat yogamatma vishuddhe. Yogi yunjita satam atmanam rahasisthitah ekagi yata chittatma nirashira parigraha Sucho deshe pratisthapya sthiramasanamaatmana natyuchram natinicham natyuchir chailajaneka sutram tattarikagram manah upavishya tatra upavishya. In a place that is solitude and establishing or seat asanam, tatra on that asana upavishya, sit down. And then mana ekagram krutva, bringing your mind into focus. Yata chittendriya kriya. How do you do that? One who is yata and controlled. Chitta indriya kriya. The kriyas, activities of chitta are also brought under control. The activities of indriya are also brought under control. Becoming like that, then ekagram manah krutva. Then may you focus your attention upon the object of meditation. Yunjad yogam atma vishuddhe. Yogam here means that may you concentrate upon, focus upon, identify with the self. The object of meditation here, atma vishuddhe, for purification of the mind. Ityadi Bhagavad Vachana. So this Bhagavad Vachana is there, 6th chapter of the Gita. Manas samadhana anushthanena atma suddhi sampadya avashishyate. Does this statement apply to a wise person or not? That's the point. This statement occurring in the 6th chapter of the Gita, does it not apply to the wise person? Or who does it apply to? So that statement is taken here for analysis. To understand that it does not, it applies to an aspirant, a seeker, and not to a wise person. Ityadi Bhagavad Vachanat Manas Samadhana Anusthanena Atma Suddhi Sampadi. So, Yunjat, this is Vidhi. Yogam Yunjat, he must concentrate his mind Atma Vishuddhe. For self-purification, meaning for purification of mind, he must necessarily focus his mind upon the self. So, Manas Samadhana Anusthana Atma Suddhi Sampadya Avashishyate. So, for the wise person also, the self-purification still remains to be done by focusing the attention upon the Atma. Iti ashankya, meaning that even for the wise person also, doesn't the self-purification, does it not still remain to be done? You gain the knowledge, all right, but what about self-purification? Like this, after gaining knowledge, you focus your attention upon Atma to purify the mind. Does that kartavya, does that duty still does not remain? Does it not yet remain to be accomplished yet for the wise person? Iti ashange tasyaha prageva siddhatvat. No, tasya atma shuddhe, the atma shuddhi, self-purification already taken place before knowledge takes place. So antahakana shuddhi should be there even before for knowledge to take place. Na idanim asti avasarha iti. And therefore now, after knowledge has taken place, na avasarha, there is no occasion or a question of self-purification. Asamadhim, next verse is Asamadhim na pashyami nirvikarasya sarvada brahmano me vishuddhasya shodhyam nanyad vipapmanah. Sarvada nirvikarasya asamadhim na pashyami. The wise person says that I who is sarvada nirvikara, ever changeless, Samadhi means concentration. Samadhi means vikshepa. Samadhi means complete resolution of the mind. Complete tranquility of the mind is samadhi. Samadhi means then lack of tranquility, that means vikshepa, that means the distraction of the mind. Nirvikarasya depends on how I look upon myself. If still there is identification in the mind, then the state of mind will become my state. In that case, there can be a need for doing something with the mind. But nirvikarasya sarvada, but I who look upon myself as nirvikara, as changeless. I see no reason that I have to do anything with the mind because I don't think that I am distracted. In identification of the mind, there is a distraction when the mind gets distracted. Dhyayati eva, lelayati eva. But when that is not so, the dhyanam, lelayanam both happen at the level of mind, not the level of vishuddhasya, nirvikarasya. Samadhi, the occasion for samadhi is there when there is asamadhi. Occasion for the concentration comes when there is distraction. But I don't see distraction in me. Who is nirvikara? Nirvikarasya brahmana vishuddhasya me. So verse 34 also said mama. So who is that mama? Who is that atma? I who is nirvikaroham brahmana brahmaham vishuddhoham. Vipapmana, and therefore devoid of papa, to be devoid of any distraction, any anxieties, any restlessness. So shodhyam na anyat vidyate. So what is there for me to purify? I do not see anything other than myself. And so in my perception, what is only nirvikaram, shuddham, vishuddhoham, nirvikaram. What is, not only I am vishuddha, what is vishuddha? What is this nirvikara really? Therefore, what is it that to be focused or concentrated? The Tika says, vikarohi sama, so nirvikarasya, therefore, a samadhi is vikara. That's how the explanation is given. Because verse says, nirvikarasya me. I who is nirvikara. For I who is nirvikara, there cannot be asamadhi. You always samadhi. So asamadhi is vikara. That's why asamadhi word explains vikara. It means vikshepa in fact, asamadhi. So samadhi means vikshepa ahityam, asamadhi is vikshepa. But since Atma is described as nirvikara, therefore samadhi is said to be vikara. Vikaro hi asamadhi nama. What is called asamadhi is vikara. Change, modification. Tadhetu upadi shunyataya sada nirvikarasya. This vikara obtains an upadi. In the mind there is vikara. There can be distraction. Vrittis will change. If I see myself also as changing when the mind changes, then there will be need for me to concentrate. Upadi. So, upadi, tad hetu upadi shunyataya. Vikarasya hetu upadi. The hetu or the reason for vikara or change is upadi. It means identification of upadi really. Upadi will always change because it is prakriti. I think that I change when I am identified with upadi. Shunyataya. So the very reason for a samadhi or vikshepa or vikara, which was the identification of upadi, is not there. Therefore, hetu shunyataya. Sada nirvikarasya. Now I recognize I am nirvikara. I am always nirvikara, but now in my perception there is a wisdom that nirvikaroham. I never undergo change. Tad na pashyami, therefore I do not see any vikara in me, because I see myself as nirvikara, therefore there is no vikara in me. Nirvikar sarva brahmano me vishuddhasya. Me Brahma, I who am Brahma, or Brahma bhutasya, who I who has become Brahma. Ateva sarvada vishuddhasya, since I see myself Brahman, therefore ever pure. Praga vipapmana, and therefore before this knowledge also, I am always, now I see myself that always Shuddha. Formerly when I thought I was Ashuddha, then also I was Shuddha only. Vipapmana nitya nivritti kalmashasya. Vigataha papmanam yasmat saha. The one from whom papa has gone away. Nitya, so call it kalmasha, call it papman, call it papa. So nitya nivrit sarvada vishuddhasya means nitya nivritti kalmashasya. Was ever pure. The kalmasha, the impurity was never there in me. I was always free from that. Shodhyam. Now, there can be something to be purified in me. If I look upon myself as impure, then of course there is the duty or something to be done for self-purification. But when I see myself nirvikara, ever pure, Vishuddhasya Shodhyam Nasti. For I who is Vishuddha, there is nothing to be purified. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.